Hello and welcome to Author Talk with me, LG Thompson. The concept behind Author Talk is that on Tuesdays I'll be answering some of the questions that authors very often get asked by readers, and on Fridays I'll be sharing some of my favourite books with you. Today is a book list day and I'm really excited to be talking about the Corona books of horror. So before I go on to that, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. From round about the age of 10 or 11, right through to 15 or 16, I was addicted to a series of books called the Pan Books of Horror. These were published once a year starting in 1959 and the series ran on until 1989. Now, I didn't read every single one of them, but I had a good go at it. I used to borrow them from the library, borrow them from other people, and I had one copy that I owned myself. I kept this and reread it and reread it and reread it until it eventually just completely fell apart. I absolutely loved these stories. And another person who was a big fan of them was my granddad. My granddad lived in Glasgow and I lived in a place called Cumbernauld, which was a new town built just outside Glasgow. My granddad would quite often come and visit us for the weekend. And on a Sunday, we would go for walks. I didn't realise at the time, but the reason we went for great big lengthy walks was because there wasn't any money to do anything else. So we just left the house and we roamed the streets, and as we roamed we talked. We talked about films, we talked about things like the Universal classic movies like Dracula and Frankenstein, but especially Dracula and the Wolfman. And we talked about books, things like James Herbert's The Rats. But our favourite books to discuss were the Pan Books of Horror, because you had all the different stories in them. I mean, these were quite gory. Some of them were really quite brutal. I think some of them probably wouldn't get published today, I'm not quite sure. They were very much of their time. But my granddad and I, we pored over these now. Like when I was out walking and talking with him, like I'm talking about 10, 11, I don't think my parents had any idea of what we were actually talking about. But I absolutely loved these books. And for years I'd been looking, I was wanting that same kind of buzz and kick that I'd got from the Pan Books of Horror, but I wanted that same kick as an adult. And I would buy anthologies for my Kindle and maybe give up after a few stories because I just didn't think they were that great, they didn't engage me, whatever. And then I stumbled upon the Corona series. This cover here is from the 4th Corona book of horror stories. When I found them, there was something about the cover vibe that led me to believe, oh, I'm in for a treat here. And so I was. These books did not disappoint. I absolutely rattled through the first collection. Then I bought the second collection, then the third collection, and then I finally moved on to the 4th collection. The cover vibe, there was something about how they were all put together. They're edited by a guy called Lewis Williams. I don't know, that was like, it was like, is he the Herbert Van Thal, like of the 2000s? I don't know, it sure felt like it. The introduction to the 4th book is quite interesting because it was supposed to be published, I think maybe 2019 or 2020, something like that. And then the coronavirus hit. And these guys, they'd started off like from a really good place. They were kind of building up their audience and so on. And then coronavirus hit. And of course, they had the name Corona. So they were accused of cashing in on the virus. Or people made jokes like, do we get a free virus with that book? And so the whole thing, so the 4th book actually got delayed. I mean, I read that this is all written in the introduction to the 4th book. So the 4th book got delayed. I didn't discover them until I think it was about 2021. And like I say, I went through the whole lot. And I was just thinking, when I was thinking about sharing this, I started thinking about all the stories that I read in the books, and there was quite a lot of them that stayed with me. The one that really stayed with me the most was called Angel Hair by an Australian author called Deborah Sheldon. I don't like to do spoilers when I'm doing these things. So all I will say is if you're at all arachnophobic, steer clear of that story. It's beautifully written. It's really tight. You get pulled straight in, and yeah, like I remembered so much about it, like for quite a long time after I'd finished reading it. So if you're looking for a horror fix, then I highly recommend the Corona books of horror. Give yourself a treat. As far as I can see, they've only published up until this 4th collection. That's the last one that's out. There's also a Corona book of ghost stories. I haven't read that yet. And there's a Corona book of sci-fi stories. I haven't read that yet either. Both of those are on my to-read list. I will be reading them. If they bring out another collection of horror stories, I will be like on that and all over it. So if you're a horror fan at all, or if you just enjoy a really well-crafted short story, then do yourself a favour and get online, download them to your Kindle or order a hard copy and just give yourself a treat. Yes! When I'm doing these book list little videos, like I just want to say up front, I've mentioned it before, I'm just going to remind you, like I am not actually, like I'm not here to do an in-depth book crit. I'm just sharing stuff that I've found really, really enjoyable or interesting or something that's influenced me, and I just want to share the love of it. I'm particularly interested in sharing work put out by small independent publishers, because I think it's in those corners, from those places, that you're going to hear the kind of voices, you're going to read the words that you're not going to find anywhere else. You're not going to find it in the mainstream world. So that's my recommendation for this week, the Corona books of horror stories. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time on Author Talk. Herbert Van Thal, who was the person who selected the stories for the Pan Books of Horror, was born in 1904. So that was 10 years before my granddad was born and 60 years before I was born. 1904, 1914, 1964. Ooh, spooky. Or not.